The autumn wind blew harshly against the windows of a small apartment on the south side of Chicago. Inside, Sarah Mitchell stood in her tiny kitchen at 4:30 a.m., preparing lunch for her 12-year-old daughter Emma. The light above the stove flickered, reminding her to add buying new bulbs to her ever-growing list of expenses. Sarah was 34, though the tired lines around her eyes made her look older. Her brown hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her diner uniform, though clean and pressed, showed signs of wear. She hadn't bought new work clothes in over 2 years, choosing instead to spend that money on Emma's school supplies and medications. "Emma, honey, it's time to wake up," Sarah called softly, walking to her daughter's room. The apartment was so small that it took only 5 steps to reach Emma's door. She pushed it open gently, hearing the familiar wheeze in her daughter's breathing that always worried her. Emma lay curled up under her worn but clean blanket, her dark hair spread across the pillow. Next to her bed sat an inhaler and a stack of medical bills that Sarah had been reviewing the night before. The latest statement showed they owed the hospital $3,275 for Emma's last asthma-related emergency room visit. "5 more minutes, Mom," Emma mumbled, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Sarah smiled despite her exhaustion. "Sorry, sweetie. I need to drop you at Mrs. Garcia's before my shift starts." Mrs. Garcia, their elderly neighbor, watched Emma in the early mornings before school. She charged only $10 per day, a kindness that Sarah couldn't imagine living without. While Emma slowly got ready, Sarah packed their lunches: peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, apples from the discount bin at the grocery store, and water bottles they refilled each day. She had exactly $43 left until her next paycheck, and it needed to last 4 more days. At 5:15 a.m., they left their apartment. The elevator was broken again, so they walked down 3 flights of stairs. Emma's breathing became slightly labored by the second floor, making Sarah's heart clench with worry. The medication that helped control Emma's asthma best cost $125 per month, even with insurance. Sarah had been taking extra shifts at her second job, cleaning offices in the evenings, trying to save up for it. "Mom, Kelly's having a birthday party this Saturday," Emma said as they walked to Mrs. Garcia's apartment. "She's going to have it at the new trampoline park." Sarah's chest tightened. The trampoline park charged $25 per child, money she simply didn't have. "We'll see, honey," she said, using the phrase that both of them knew usually meant no. After dropping Emma off, Sarah hurried to catch the 5:30 a.m. bus to Pete's Diner, where she had worked for the past 3 years. The morning air was cold, and her uniform jacket wasn't quite warm enough, but a new coat was another item on the long list of things she couldn't afford. The bus was nearly empty this early. Sarah used the 20-minute ride to review her bills on her cracked phone screen. Rent was due in 2 weeks, $850. Emma needed new shoes, probably $40 if she could find a sale. The electricity bill was higher than usual, $95. The numbers swam before her eyes, an endless dance of not enough. Pete's Diner came into view as the bus rounded the corner. Sarah saw that Tom, the cook, had already turned on the lights. At least the diner was always warm, and Pete let his employees eat 1 free meal per shift. The bell chimed as she pushed open the door, the familiar smell of coffee and bacon greeting her. "Morning, Sarah," Tom called from the kitchen. "Ready for another day?" "Always am," she replied, tying her apron around her waist. She checked her appearance in the reflection of the coffee machine, pinning back a few loose strands of hair. The morning regulars would start arriving soon, and tips were always better when she looked neat and professional. As Sarah began her opening duties, filling salt shakers, checking napkin dispensers, starting the first pot of coffee, she thought about Emma. Her daughter was smart, creative, and deserved so much more than their struggling life could offer. Some nights, after Emma was asleep, Sarah would take out her old engineering degree from the drawer where she kept important papers. She had been just 2 years into her career when Emma's father left them, and Emma's health problems began. The choice between paying for daycare and medical bills or keeping her engineering job hadn't really been a choice at all. The door chimed again as the first customer arrived. Sarah put on her best smile, pushed away her worries, and grabbed her notepad. It was going to be another long day, but she would get through it. She always did. The morning rush at Pete's Diner was in full swing when the bell above the door chimed again. Sarah barely noticed the new customer as she balanced 3 plates of scrambled eggs and toast. It was Thursday, always their busiest morning, and she had been on her feet non-stop since 6. "Coffee, black, please," a quiet voice said from the corner booth. Sarah turned to find a man in his mid-40s sitting there, wearing a simple gray sweater and reading something on his tablet. Unlike most customers in suits who came to the diner, he didn't seem rushed or impatient. "Coming right up," Sarah replied, quickly delivering the eggs to table 5 before grabbing a clean mug and the fresh pot of coffee. As she poured his coffee, Sarah noticed the man watching old Mr. Jenkins at the counter. The elderly regular came in every morning, always ordering just plain toast and coffee, counting out exact change from a worn leather coin purse. Today, his hands were shaking more than usual as he struggled with the coins. Without thinking twice, Sarah walked over to Mr. Jenkins. "Your coffee's on me today," she said warmly, just loud enough for him to hear. The old man's eyes grew wet as he tucked the coins back into his purse. The man in the corner booth observed this quiet exchange with interest. When Sarah returned to take his order, he sat up straighter. "I'm Marcus," he said, surprising her by offering his name. "I'll have the breakfast special, please." As Sarah wrote down his order, the diner's door flew open. Emma burst in, her face flushed and her breathing labored. Sarah's heart jumped into her throat. Her daughter should have been in school. "Mom," Emma wheezed, clutching her inhaler. "The school nurse sent me home. My inhaler isn't working right." Sarah rushed to her daughter, helping her into the nearest empty booth. "Just sit down, baby. Take slow breaths." She looked desperately toward the kitchen. "Tom, I need to." "Go," Tom called back immediately. "Take care of Emma, I'll tell Pete." Marcus watched as Sarah helped Emma use her inhaler, speaking in soft, calming tones while rubbing her back. After a few minutes, Emma's breathing began to ease, but Sarah's worried expression didn't fade. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, turning back to Marcus. "I'll get someone else to help you with your order." "Please, don't worry about it," Marcus replied, his voice kind. "Is she okay?" Sarah nodded, though her hands were shaking slightly. "She will be." The nurse said her oxygen levels were a little low today. She didn't add that this was the 3rd asthma attack this month, or that she was terrified about missing more work hours to take Emma to the doctor again. To her surprise, Marcus stood up and walked to the counter, returning with a glass of water for Emma. "I have asthma too," he told the girl, setting down the glass. "It was worse when I was your age. Have you tried a nebulizer treatment?" Emma shook her head. Sarah bit her lip. They couldn't afford a nebulizer, even though the doctor had recommended one. Just then, Pete emerged from his office, his round face creased with concern. "Sarah, take Emma home. Your shift's covered." "But Pete, I need the hours," Sarah protested quietly, thinking of the upcoming bills. "Family first," Pete insisted. "Always." Marcus listened to this exchange while pulling out his wallet to pay for his untouched coffee. As he did, a business card fell out. Sarah picked it up automatically to hand back to him, glimpsing the name, Marcus Chen, CEO of Chen Sustainable Solutions. Her eyes widened slightly. Everyone knew about Chen Sustainable Solutions. The company was famous for developing affordable green energy technology. She had even studied some of their early solar panel designs in engineering school before. "Keep it," Marcus said, noticing her recognition of the company name. "And please, take care of your daughter. Some things are more important than one morning's work." Sarah tucked the card into her pocket, too focused on Emma to fully process what had just happened. As she gathered their things to leave, she didn't notice Marcus making a phone call or see him watching thoughtfully as she helped Emma out the door. The morning sun had fully risen now, warming the cold Chicago streets. Sarah held Emma close as they waited for the bus, her mind already calculating which bills could be delayed to pay for another doctor's visit. The business card felt heavy in her pocket, but for now, it was just another piece of paper in a life full of more immediate concerns. A week had passed since Emma's asthma attack at the diner. Sarah stood behind the counter, refilling sugar dispensers during the quiet afternoon lull. Her mind was on the doctor's appointment they'd had yesterday, another prescription, another bill she couldn't afford. The bell above the door chimed. Sarah looked up and nearly dropped the sugar container. Marcus Chen walked in, this time wearing a navy business suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He smiled warmly when he saw her. "Good afternoon, Sarah," he said, settling into the same corner booth as before. How is Emma doing? Sarah was surprised he remembered their names. She's better, thank you. She grabbed a menu out of habit, but he shook his head. Actually, I came to talk to you, Marcus said. Do you have a few minutes? Sarah glanced around the nearly empty diner. Only Mr. Jenkins sat at the counter, dozing over his coffee cup. Let me check with Tom. When she returned to Marcus's booth, he gestured for her to sit down. Sarah perched nervously on the edge of the seat, smoothing her wrinkled apron. I hope you don't mind, Marcus began, but I did some asking around after meeting you last week. Pete speaks very highly of you. He mentioned you have an engineering degree. Sarah's cheeks warmed. Environmental engineering from UIC. But that was a long time ago. 7 years isn't so long, Marcus replied. Pete also mentioned you were top of your class. Sarah shifted uncomfortably. That was before Emma got sick. Before her father left, things changed. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Life often throws us curves we don't expect, but sometimes it also offers unexpected opportunities. He pulled out a folder and placed it on the table. We have an opening at Chen Sustainable Solutions. Entry-level environmental engineer, focusing on our new affordable housing initiative. Sarah's heart began to race. Mr. Chen, Marcus, please. Marcus, I haven't worked as an engineer in years, and even if I could. She thought of Emma, of the irregular hours she'd need childcare, of the cost of proper business clothes. As if reading her mind, Marcus opened the folder. The position comes with full health insurance from day one, including dependents. He slid out a paper with benefit details. We have an on-site daycare center for employees' children. The starting salary is $75,000. Sarah's hands trembled as she looked at the paper. That was more money than she made in 3 years at both her jobs combined. But doubt crept in. Why me? You don't even know me. Marcus leaned back, his expression serious. I know you work 2 jobs to support your daughter. I know you give free coffee to elderly customers who can't afford it. I know you maintained a 4.0 GPA while working part-time through college. He smiled slightly. And I know talent when I see it. Sarah stared at the papers, her mind racing. I would need time to think about it. To talk to Emma. Of course, Marcus said. But there's one more thing. He pulled out another document. This is a signing bonus. Enough to cover moving costs, a professional wardrobe, and, he paused meaningfully, a new nebulizer for Emma. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back quickly, embarrassed. I don't want charity. This isn't charity, Marcus said firmly. This is an investment. In you, in your potential, and in what you can bring to my company. He stood up, straightening his suit jacket. The position starts in 2 weeks. Take a few days to think about it. As he turned to leave, Sarah found her voice. Why did you really come back? Marcus paused. Because 7 years ago, someone took a chance on me when I was at my lowest point. Sometimes, people just need an opportunity to show what they're capable of. He placed his business card on top of the folder. Call me when you decide. After he left, Sarah sat in the booth for a long time, staring at the folder. Through the window, she could see the Chicago skyline, the tall buildings reaching into the cloudy sky. Somewhere in one of those towers was an office, a desk, a chance to be an engineer again. Tom's voice broke into her thoughts. You okay, Sarah? She looked up at him, then back at the folder. I don't know, she answered honestly. Everything could change. Maybe, Tom said wisely, that's exactly what you and Emma need. The waiting room of Chicago Children's Hospital was quiet for a Saturday morning. Sarah sat nervously beside Emma, still not quite believing they were here. 3 days had passed since Marcus Chen's job offer, and she hadn't given him an answer yet. But this morning, his secretary had called to arrange an appointment with one of the city's top pediatric asthma specialists. Emma Mitchell, a nurse in bright butterfly pattern scrubs, called their name. She led them down a hallway decorated with cheerful animal paintings to a large, modern examination room. Dr. Lisa Wong entered a few minutes later, her kind face breaking into a warm smile. You must be Emma and Sarah. I understand you've been having some trouble with your asthma management. As Emma described her symptoms, Sarah noticed how different this doctor's approach was. Dr. Wong took detailed notes, asked thoughtful questions, and actually listened. When Emma mentioned being afraid to join school sports, Dr. Wang's eyes lit up. Many of my patients play sports successfully with proper asthma management, she said. With the right treatment plan, you could too. Sarah's heart ached at the hope that appeared on Emma's face. But the medications and equipment, she started. Dr. Wang held up her hand. Mr. Chen has arranged full coverage for Emma's treatment. Let's focus on getting her healthy, okay? After a thorough examination and breathing tests, Dr. Wang presented them with a comprehensive care plan. It included not just a new nebulizer, but also preventive medications and an updated rescue inhaler. We'll see Emma every 2 weeks initially, she explained, then monthly once her symptoms are better controlled. On their way out, Sarah was told there was no bill to pay. In the elevator, Emma hugged her mother tightly. Mom, do you think I could really try out for soccer in spring? Sarah stroked her daughter's hair, tears threatening to spill. Let's see how the new treatment plan goes first, sweetie. The following week brought more surprises. A woman named Janet Torres, the head of employee services at Chen Sustainable Solutions, called to discuss childcare options. We have an opening at our on-site center, Janet explained, but Mr. Chen mentioned Emma might be too old for that. Would you be interested in meeting Mrs. Anderson instead? Mrs. Anderson turned out to be a retired teacher who lived 3 blocks from Chen Sustainable Solutions. She ran an after-school program for older kids, helping with homework and organizing educational activities. When Sarah and Emma visited, they found a cozy home filled with books, art supplies, and the smell of freshly baked cookies. I've been working with Chen employees' children for 5 years now, Mrs. Anderson told them, while Emma explored her impressive library. Marcus has very high standards for childcare providers. The cost was reasonable, and Mrs. Anderson was willing to be flexible with hours. More importantly, Emma seemed to light up in the warm, educational environment. Back at the diner, Sarah's coworkers noticed the change in her. You're glowing, Maria, another waitress, commented. Is it a man? Sarah laughed, shaking her head. No, it's a possibility. A chance for something better. The Chen offer? Tom asked from the kitchen window. When Sarah looked surprised, he chuckled. Pete told us. We've been taking bets on whether you'll take it. And? Sarah asked, curious. Every single person here bet you would, Tom said softly. Because you deserve it, Sarah. That evening, as Sarah helped Emma with her homework, she watched her daughter take a deep breath from her new nebulizer. The wheezing that had become their constant companion was already less noticeable. Mom? Emma looked up from her math problems. Are we really going to move? Start something new? Sarah touched the business card in her pocket. She'd been carrying it everywhere. Marcus Chen had shown them nothing but kindness and respect, opening doors without making them feel like charity cases. Every promise he'd made had been fulfilled. Would you be okay with that? Sarah asked carefully. With big changes? Emma nodded, her eyes bright. I think. She paused, sounding older than her 12 years. Sometimes you have to be brave to get to something better. Sarah pulled out her phone and Marcus's card. It was time to be brave. Time to trust not just Marcus Chen, but herself. As she dialed the number, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Sarah stood in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting her new navy blazer for the 5th time. It was 7:00 a.m. on her first Monday at Chen Sustainable Solutions, and her stomach was doing somersaults. The woman in the mirror looked different from the tired waitress she'd been just 2 weeks ago. Her hair was neatly styled, her clothes were crisp and professional, and she wore small pearl earrings, a good luck gift from the diner staff on her last day. Mom, have you seen my science folder? Emma called from her room in their new apartment. The space was still half filled with moving boxes, but it was clean, safe, and only 10 minutes from both Sarah's new office and Emma's school. Check the blue box marked school stuff, Sarah called back, grabbing her laptop bag, another new item she was getting used to. They had spent the weekend organizing Emma's medications in the bathroom cabinet and setting up their new morning routine. No more 4:30 a.m. wake-ups. The elevator in their building actually worked, and Sarah found herself sharing it with other professionals heading to work. She dropped Emma at Mrs. Anderson's house, where she would have breakfast and get a ride to school with 2 other kids from the program. Good luck, Mom, Emma said, hugging her tightly. You're going to be amazing. Sarah's heels clicked against the polished floor of the Chen Sustainable Solutions lobby. The security guard, Jim, greeted her with a warm smile and handed her an employee badge. 16th floor, he reminded her. Janet from HR will meet you there. The elevator was made of glass, offering a view of Chicago that made Sarah's heart race, partly from excitement, partly from nervousness. She clutched her badge like a lifeline as the numbers climbed. 14, 15, 16. Janet Torres was waiting as promised, her friendly face helping calm Sarah's nerves. "Ready for your first day?" she asked, leading Sarah through an open office space filled with natural light and plants. "I think so," Sarah replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. They passed several groups of people working at standing desks or gathered around whiteboards covered in technical drawings. "This is your desk," Janet said, stopping at a clean workspace with a new computer and a small welcome plant. "Your team will be here soon. They're excited to meet you." Before Sarah could respond, a familiar voice called out, "Good morning, Sarah." Marcus Chen approached, wearing his usual kind smile. "How are you settling into the new apartment?" "It's wonderful," Sarah said sincerely. "Emma loves having her own room, and the nebulizer station you suggested for her bedroom has made mornings so much easier." Marcus nodded, clearly pleased. "I have your first project assignment ready. We're developing affordable housing units with built-in air filtration systems. Given your personal experience with Emma's asthma, I think you'll have valuable insight to contribute." Sarah's engineering mind was already spinning with ideas. She had spent years watching Emma struggle to breathe in their old apartment's poor air quality. Now she might help other families avoid that struggle. Her new team arrived shortly after. David, the project leader, was a friendly man in his 50s who immediately started explaining their current challenges. Lisa, a recent graduate, showed Sarah how to access the computer systems. Michael, the environmental systems specialist, brought her up to speed on their air filtration research. By lunchtime, Sarah's head was swimming with information, but she felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. Her desk was covered in technical papers, and she had already filled 3 pages of her notebook with ideas and questions. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Hope your morning is going great. Mrs. A is helping me start a science project about air quality." Sarah smiled, taking a moment to look around her new workplace. Through the window, she could see her old bus stop, tiny in the distance. The diner was somewhere down there too. Those places had been her life for so long, and she would always be grateful for how they helped her survive. But here, surrounded by innovation and possibility, Sarah Mitchell wasn't just surviving anymore. She was beginning to thrive. 3 months into her new job, Sarah sat alone in the women's restroom, trying to stop her hands from shaking. The presentation she had just given to the project leaders had gone terribly wrong. Her voice had trembled, she had mixed up her slides, and worst of all, she had blanked out when Mr. Rodriguez, the head of development, asked her a simple question about air filtration systems. Her phone buzzed, a text from the school. Emma had gotten into a fight during lunch break. Sarah's heart sank even further. This was the 3rd problem at school this month. "Sarah?" Janet's voice came from outside the restroom. "Marcus would like to see you in his office." Walking to Marcus's office felt like the longest journey of Sarah's life. She was sure she was about to be fired. How could she have been so stupid to think she could jump back into engineering after 7 years of serving coffee? To her surprise, Marcus wasn't behind his desk when she entered. Instead, he was sitting on the small couch by the window, looking through an old photo album. He gestured for her to sit down. "Did I ever tell you about my first major presentation?" he asked, not looking up from the album. When Sarah shook her head, he continued, "I threw up in the bathroom beforehand, spilled water on my laptop during the presentation, and called our biggest investor by the wrong name." Despite her misery, Sarah couldn't help but smile slightly. "What happened?" "I thought my career was over," Marcus said, finally looking up. "Instead, that investor became one of my biggest supporters." "Want to know why?" He turned the album toward her. The photos showed a much younger Marcus standing in front of a small, run-down building. "Because he saw past my nervousness to the passion I had for the project." Sarah studied the photos. "Is this?" "My first sustainable housing project. It was a disaster in many ways. The solar panels kept failing, the recycling system broke down twice, and the residents complained about everything. He smiled at the memory. But each failure taught us something valuable. That project laid the groundwork for everything we do today. Sarah's phone buzzed again. I'm sorry, she said, checking the message. Emma's in the principal's office. I need to go, Marcus said. But remember, Emma's going through her own growing pains too. At school, Sarah found Emma sitting outside the principal's office, her face tear-stained. The story came out in bits and pieces. Some girls had been making fun of her, calling her charity case, and saying she only got into the school because of Marcus Chen's money. I just wanted them to stop, Emma whispered. So I told them their parents probably worked for my mom's friend now. Sarah sighed, pulling Emma into a hug. Oh, honey. The principal, Mrs. Torres, was surprisingly understanding. Transitions are hard, she said, especially at this age. But Emma's grades are excellent, and her science teacher says she's showing real leadership in their air quality project. That evening, Sarah ordered pizza, something they could actually afford now, and sat with Emma on their living room floor, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. Mom, Emma asked, picking at her pizza, do you ever miss our old life? Sarah thought about it honestly. I miss some things. The way Mr. Jenkins always saved the newspaper crossword for me, Tom's terrible jokes, simplicity of knowing exactly what each day would bring. But I don't miss being scared all the time. About money, about your health, about the future. She looked around their new apartment. Change is hard, really hard, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. Emma nodded slowly. Like how my new asthma medicine makes me feel weird sometimes, but my breathing is so much better. Exactly like that, Sarah said, touched by her daughter's wisdom. Sometimes the growing pains are part of getting stronger. That night, Sarah pulled out her presentation notes again. Instead of focusing on the technical details that had tripped her up, she began writing about what she really knew, about families struggling to breathe in poor quality housing, about the difference a safe home could make. By midnight, she had a new presentation outlined, one that came from her heart as much as her engineering knowledge. Tomorrow would be another chance to grow, and this time, she was ready for it. Sarah stood in front of her bedroom mirror, just as she had on her first day at Chen Sustainable Solutions. But this time, her reflection showed a different woman, confident, focused, and ready. 6 months had passed since her disastrous presentation, and today she would present her innovative housing design to the entire board of directors. Mom, your coffee's ready, Emma called from the kitchen. The smell of breakfast filled their now fully furnished apartment. Emma had become quite the morning helper, managing her own medications and even making simple meals. Her recent checkup with Dr. Wong had shown the best lung function numbers yet. Sarah found Emma at the kitchen counter, dressed for school in her soccer practice clothes. The team had welcomed her warmly after her breathing improved, and she had even scored her first goal last week. Nervous? Emma asked, sliding a coffee mug across the counter. Sarah picked up the mug, smiling at the words printed on it. World's smartest mom. Emma's recent birthday gift to her. A little, but the good kind of nervous. The morning sun streamed through their windows as Sarah spread out her presentation materials one last time. The design she had created was unlike anything Chen Sustainable Solutions had done before. It combined environmental engineering with real-life experience, creating affordable housing units specifically designed for families dealing with respiratory issues. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Boardroom is ready whenever you are. They're excited to hear your ideas. In the elevator right up to the conference floor, Sarah thought about how far she had come. After her failed presentation months ago, she had thrown herself into research, spending evenings studying new air filtration technologies and interviewing families in low-income housing. She had even visited her old apartment building, taking air quality readings that confirmed what she had always suspected about its poor ventilation. The boardroom was packed when she arrived. Marcus sat at the head of the table, giving her an encouraging nod. Mr. Rodriguez, who had once made her freeze up with a simple question, was there too. But this time, Sarah wasn't afraid. Good morning, she began, her voice clear and strong. Today I want to show you something different. Not just another housing project, but a solution that could change lives. She clicked to her first slide, a picture of her old apartment building. This is where my daughter and I lived for 7 years. Like many families in similar buildings, she struggled with severe asthma. But it wasn't just about medical treatment. It was about the air she breathed every day in her own home. The board members leaned forward as Sarah explained her design. The buildings would use advanced air filtration systems, but with a twist. Each unit would have customizable zones, allowing families to create safer spaces for family members with respiratory issues. Solar panels would power the systems, making them cost-effective for both builders and residents. But here's what makes this different, Sarah continued, showing detailed cost analysis. By using recycled materials and innovative construction methods, we can build these units at just 15% more than standard affordable housing. The energy savings alone would offset that cost within 5 years. Questions came rapid fire from the board members. This time, Sarah answered each one confidently, backing up her responses with data from her research. When Mr. Rodriguez asked about the filtration systems, she pulled up detailed technical specifications she had developed herself. 2 hours later, Sarah walked out of the boardroom feeling lightheaded. They hadn't just approved her project, they had given her a team and a budget to build a prototype unit within 6 months. Marcus caught up with her at her desk. "Congratulations," he said warmly. "I knew you had it in you." Sarah looked at him gratefully. "I couldn't have done any of this without the chance you gave me." "No," Marcus corrected her. "You did this because you were ready for it. Because you understood something none of us did, that the best solutions come from people who have lived the problems they're trying to solve." Sarah's phone lit up with a text from Emma. "How did it go?" As Sarah typed back the good news, she noticed her hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady and sure, like her future ahead. 1 year had passed since that first morning Sarah walked into Pete's diner wearing her worn waitress uniform. Today, she pushed open the familiar door again, the bell chiming just as it always had. But this time, she wore a tailored business suit, and Emma walked confidently beside her, carrying a stack of colorful brochures. "Sarah," Tom's voice boomed from the kitchen. And little Emma, though not so little anymore. He wiped his hands on his apron and came out to hug them both. The diner looked exactly the same cushioned booths, the same coffee-stained menus, the same warm smell of bacon and eggs. "Is everyone here?" Sarah asked, looking around at the gathered crowd. The diner was closed for the morning, filled instead with her old regular customers and some new faces, families from her old apartment building, all invited for a special breakfast. Pete emerged from his office, beaming proudly. "Everyone's here, just like you asked." He gestured to the corner booth, Marcus Chen's old spot, where Marcus himself now sat, dressed casually and chatting with Mr. Jenkins. Sarah took a deep breath and moved to the center of the diner. "Thank you all for coming today," she began. "A year ago, my life changed in this very room. Today, I want to help change other lives too." Emma started handing out the brochures. Glossy pamphlets showing a beautiful new apartment building with the Chen Sustainable Solutions logo. "This is the Fresh Start Housing Project," Sarah continued. "Affordable housing specifically designed for families dealing with respiratory health issues. And thanks to Mr. Chen and the board, we're offering priority placement to families from our old neighborhood." The room buzzed with excitement as Sarah explained the features of the new buildings, the advanced air filtration, the energy-efficient design, the green spaces, but most importantly, the affordable rent rates that would make it accessible to working families. "The first building opens next month," she announced. "And everyone in this room is eligible to apply." She smiled at Mr. Jenkins, "including retired residents on fixed incomes." As the families gathered around tables to fill out applications, Emma tugged on Sarah's sleeve. "Mom, can I tell them about the other thing?" Sarah nodded proudly. Emma stood up, suddenly seeming much taller than her 13 years. "Hi everyone. Some of you know me from when I used to come here during my asthma attacks. Well, I started a support group at school for kids with breathing problems. And thanks to Mom's company, we're going to have a special room in the new building for our meetings." The morning flew by as Sarah moved from table to table, answering questions and helping with applications. She overheard snippets of conversation. Mothers discussing their children's health problems, fathers talking about high heating bills, elderly residents sharing their struggles with poor air quality. Near the end of the morning, Marcus came to stand beside her. "You've done something remarkable here, Sarah. This isn't just a building project anymore. It's a community." Sarah watched as Emma showed Mrs. Garcia, their old neighbor, pictures of the building's garden area. I learned from the best, she said. You didn't just give me a job, Marcus. You showed me how to turn difficulties into solutions. Speaking of solutions, Marcus smiled. The board approved your proposal for 5 more Fresh Start buildings across Chicago. They want you to head the entire project division. Sarah's eyes widened. Really? But that's such a big responsibility. Says the woman who just revolutionized affordable housing while raising a teenager. Marcus chuckled. You're ready, Sarah. You've been ready for a long time. Later, as the crowd began to leave, Sarah found herself alone behind the counter one last time. She ran her hand along the smooth surface, remembering all the mornings she had spent here, dreaming of a better life while filling coffee cups. Mom, Emma called. Mrs. Anderson invited us for dinner to celebrate. She's making her famous lasagna. Sarah smiled, taking one last look around the diner. She had started her journey here, scared and uncertain. Now she was leaving as someone new, someone stronger, braver, and ready to help others find their own fresh start. The bell chimed as they left, its familiar sound now a reminder that sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of another.